Well, good morning, Michiganders. It's Tuesday, July 26th, and you're listening to Tuesday with Tom, Michigan's only live weekly internet radio show where we answer your questions about estate planning and estate settlement in Michigan. As always, I'm your host, Tom Doyle, estate planning attorney, lifelong Michigan resident, and ambassador for all things good in the state of Michigan. Welcome to today's program. Before I get started, two notes of programming today. The first is that since at the same time this program is scheduled to be broadcast, which is 10 o'clock Tuesday morning, I will be putting on an estate planning seminar for my good friend Scott Palamecki from CG Financial in Newberry, Michigan. And so this program is being recorded the day before while I'm finishing up what was an extended vacation with my family in northern Michigan. Today, being Monday, I'm doing a couple seminars in Sault Ste. Marie, so I'm recording it a day early anyhow. And since it's July 26th, I do want to give a special shout out to my daughter Mo. Happy birthday, Mo. I love you, and I hope that you have an awesome birthday, honey. Now, last week's show. You might recall last week's show, I was broadcasting live from Stafford's Perry Hotel in Petoskey. And I talked about different suggestions for how to include your grandchildren in your estate plan. A couple ideas. One was the informal concept, maybe just give something to them during your lifetime, or give something to the parent that they will give that to them at a later point in time. Perhaps using beneficiary designations, or I talked about uniform transfers to minors accounts that can be established with all kinds of different assets. Talked about the benefits of perhaps using a living trust as a tool for providing something to the grandchildren, and also talked about the advantages that might be available to you by using a 529 plan if you're looking at providing educational opportunities for your grandchildren. Well, as you probably know, last week I was on vacation with my wife Ginny and our children, spouses of our children, significant others, our grandson Connor. Had a great time as we spent the time traveling around, doing some boating, some other sightseeing activities, Mackinac Island, etc. last week. And then, of course, at the end of it all, it's time to say goodbye. And any of those get-togethers, we get together maybe once or twice a year with all the kids. And so it's certainly a difficult time when we're looking at saying goodbye after an event like that. But what makes it easier for me is knowing that it's not a final goodbye. We're going to be getting together with the different children over different times over the next several months, probably at Christmas, but even well before Christmas with individuals anyhow. So saying goodbye at the end of a vacation or when loved ones are coming over and visiting you, that can be a difficult thing. Well, today we're going to talk about saying a different kind of goodbye, and this is saying goodbye to your loved ones. It might be saying goodbye when someone that you know and love is dying, and it might truly be a final goodbye that you're saying to them. And the other type of goodbye that we're going to talk about together today is a goodbye letter. A lot of clients might do a goodbye letter as part of an estate plan or a letter of final instructions that they're going to be providing to their loved ones. So those are the things that we are going to be talking about in today's program. But before we do that, looking at upcoming events, as I remind you before, the office is currently putting together our fall seminar workshop schedule. And if you would be interested in having Amanda and or I speak to your church or service group or clients, please call us. Call the office, the Lansing office number, 517-323-7366, or shoot me an email, tom@tuesdaywithtom.com, and we'll be in contact with you about trying to get that on our schedule. We can do any number of topics that might be of interest to your group or your church members, etc. I've got a church local in Lansing that's had me come in and do a whole sequence of seminars for their church members, which are all about charitable giving and including the church in your estate plan. So we can come up with an estate planning seminar that may be of benefit to you or might be able to be used by you in marketing yourself to new clients. Perhaps you're a life insurance agent or a financial plan or something along that lines and wants to utilize a quality estate planning seminar as a way to educate current clients and or to attract new clients to your practice. So contact us if that's something that we can assist you with, so we can make sure that we fit that in on our calendar. Okay, so today's show, again, saying goodbye to your loved ones. Perhaps not a very easy thing to do. I have had to do that on a couple occasions. Perhaps a number of you have had to do that too. I remember when my Uncle Gibby died several years ago. He was like a second father to me, and he had had a heart attack and died before I'd gotten to the hospital. And I remember my initial sense of not only loss of my uncle, but just feeling like, if you had hung on just a little bit longer, I could have seen you one last time. I could have told you I loved you one last time, and I just didn't have the opportunity to do that. Then when my own mother passed away a few years ago, she was in Florida, had been fighting breast cancer for a number of years, but in her final illness, we had hospice called in while she was in Florida. Had the opportunity to spend several days with my mother, as did my father and all my siblings. And so that's a different kind of saying goodbye at that point in time. And I had time to spend it with my mother and share with her my thoughts about her and discussing the family and taking care of my father, all those kinds of things that we oftentimes are going to have in that conversation. Also had the occasion with my Aunt Clara, who was my Uncle Gibby's spouse. And when she died, I was the one who was there. I'd spent her last number of hours with her at her final time. So I had an opportunity to say goodbye to her. So I've had some personal experience with saying goodbye, and it never just seems right. You never feel like you're necessarily doing the right thing. You're sometimes at a loss as to what should you say, how much should you say. And so one of the things I came across was an interesting article that was on the caring.com website, which is how to say goodbye when someone you love is dying. A number of different authors that are being quoted in that particular article. But one of the things that the author of the article talks about is that anytime you're going to be involved in that sort of conversation, at least the people who have looked at it think that there are certain things that someone would appreciate hearing from us at that time, some sort of reassurance and indications of love are very important to the person who is dying at that point in time. So they list a number of lessons that have been learned, I guess, by others, primarily a lot of caretakers involved in hospice who see people dying regularly and families' interactions with them. And so I want to share with you some of the lessons that they talk about today. And the first lesson they talk about, which is lesson number 1, don't wait until the last minute. And they talk about people who feel that they just had to be there, kind of, in some senses, my Uncle Gibby, although it wasn't a situation where we knew he was dying, but that idea that you're waiting until the last minute and then the person dies and you didn't have an opportunity to say something to them. So it's a conversation that you shouldn't be putting off until the last minute. And the other problem with waiting until the last minute, I remember this discussion with hospice care workers with my mother, because she's got 7 children, and my father and some of the grandchildren were there in and out of the room all the time. And one of the things that the hospice folks shared with us anyhow was, look, a lot of times the person who is dying wants to die alone. We have a feeling that we should be in the room with them, but oftentimes they have a sense that they want to die when there's nobody in the room. And so they oftentimes see that with the dying person, that when people leave the room, that's the time they're most likely to die. Well, if you're thinking, I'm just going to leave the room and I'll come back at a later point in time and have a chance to have this conversation with my loved one, it might be too late, because it might in fact be the time that they chose to die, and you didn't have a chance to talk to them about that. So another thing they talk about is that in their estimation, the dying person usually wants to hear 4 things. One is, please forgive me for things I've done. or it might be, I forgive you for things that you've done. And now those may or may not be appropriate, but certainly a thank you for what you've meant to me. And of course, I love you is always a welcome message to the dying person. Lesson number 2 they talk about is it's okay, even comforting, to let on that you know the end is nearing. There's sometimes people who are afraid to talk to their loved ones about the fact that the end is nearing. It's an uncomfortable conversation to have, but the authors talk about it actually reassures the dying person that you understand what they're going through, in that you are ready for that and that they are ready for that. And so it's okay to talk about the fact that the end is near in that conversation. Lesson number 3, they talk about following the dying person's lead. And that has to do with, if the person's talking about their impending death directly or indirectly, you don't want to correct them. You don't want to say, no, you're not, those kinds of things, but just take their lead. If they're talking about dying, it might be, well, we're here with you. Tell me more about what you're experiencing. You might have the dying person ask you, are you dying? That's a direct question that is sometimes asked to try and figure out how you're attempting to deal with this, and that you really don't know the answer to that question. So perhaps I don't know. How are you feeling today? At least the author suggests might be an appropriate response to that sort of a question anyhow. Another lesson that they talk about is to the importance of keep talking even if you're not sure you're being heard. I know in my mother's situation, she had been in hospice for a number of days before she finally lost consciousness, and was in what at least visually would appear to be an unconscious state for a couple days before she did ultimately die. And apparently scientists have established that hearing is one of the last senses that leave a person. And so they talk about the importance of always assume that the person who, whether they're unconscious or in a coma, or maybe otherwise seems unresponsive, they can probably hear you. And so, one, you have to be careful of what conversations you might be having in their presence that they're going to hear you, but don't be afraid to talk to them. Don't be afraid to talk to the loved one, your mom, your dad, whoever the family member happens to be. Even though they're not responsive, there's a very good chance that they might be hearing what you are talking about. Another lesson they talk about is try and be present. Don't get ahead of yourself, meaning it's overwhelming, but sometimes you feel like, well, everything I say to my mom, it's the last thing I'm ever going to say to my mom, and what are the right words to say to my mom? And they talk about, you can't really put yourself through that. You just have to have conversations, whatever those conversations happen to be, and don't get so emotional that you get to the point where you're so focused on what you're saying that you're really not going to have a good conversation or a good experience, as best experience as you can have with your loved one. They talk about trusting your instincts and not the rules. As they indicate, a lot of times there seems to be an expectation perhaps that people should be very somber around the dying person, and that may or may not be appropriate. I know in my mother's situation, when she first went into hospice and was to the point where she was no longer conscious much of the time anyhow, we probably came very close to getting thrown out of her hospice room because we were drinking beer and had Kentucky Fried Chicken, and we're all sitting around chatting, having a family dinner, much as we would always do with my mother, even being present in a healthy situation. And so that whole being somber and quiet, that's one of the lessons that they talk about, is you don't necessarily have to do that. That might not be the appropriate thing to be doing for your loved one. Another lesson, you don't have to issue a formal farewell every time you leave the room. There's a sense of every time I leave the room, this is my final farewell, so I better say something important because maybe my loved one won't be here when I come back. Well, you can't beat yourself up over that. Again, the person might choose the time when you're gone to actually depart this earth. And so you can't put yourself through that. And one of the things they indicated that a mom that they had talked to apparently had a great sense of relief when she realized that the origin of the goodbye is actually God be with you. So she felt much more comfortable about that when she was leaving the room, when she was saying goodbye. It wasn't necessarily goodbye, goodbye, but it was a wish that God would take care of her loved one at that point in time. Hospice workers apparently suggest that when you're leaving a room, it might be "I love you," "sleep well," something along that lines, but not feeling like every time you have to give some final farewell to your loved one anyhow. And lastly, you can speak volumes without uttering a word. Just being there. If you can't think of the right things to say, just be there. Hug them, touch them, show that you care for them is as important sometimes as saying anything. So I think a lot of good advice from that particular website, and I would encourage you to take a look at it at a point in time. Again, it's caring.com, and the article is How to Say Goodbye When Someone You Love is Dying. And hopefully the conversation that we're having today, at least, because you only have one chance. I mean, I only had one chance to say goodbye to my mother, only one chance to say goodbye to my aunt and uncle. And so having a little bit better information might make that task a little bit easier for you when the point in time comes for you. Now, the other sort of goodbye, though, from an estate planning standpoint, is a goodbye letter. A number of clients are looking at putting these letters together, or a letter of final instructions. What a letter of final instruction is, you can only say so much in a will, or you can only say so much in a trust, and they're very legal documents, have a lot of legalese in them. But the idea being that for some clients, they want to have something more than that, and perhaps a letter of final instruction might be something that indicates the names and addresses of friends that you want to be contacted after your death. Perhaps your wishes about what your funeral arrangements might be. And again, Michigan, I've talked about previously, the new law in Michigan about appointing a funeral representative for you. But it might be your bank and computer passwords, those kinds of things, locations of important documents, something that's going to assist your loved ones in finding everything. I know oftentimes when clients walk in my door after someone's died, they'll say, well, I don't know where to start, and I'll ask them if they know where their mom or their dad kept their important papers, and the answer is no, I don't have a clue. Well, that kind of a thing, to be able to give direction to your loved ones so they'll be able to find what they're going to need to find in order to settle your estate, is a very helpful thing for you to do for them. It might be, though, simply a letter in which you are talking about something that's meaningful to you, or maybe it's a letter that goes along with a bequest of some sort and expresses the meaningfulness of the item and why you chose to give that particular item to that individual. Again, talked last week about grandchildren. Maybe there's a particular item of importance to you and you want to give it to a grandchild and you want them to understand why you're giving it to them. Or simply letters talking about how important that person is to you. It might be a general letter. It might be very specific letters that you're going to be preparing. Now, if you do that, keep in mind that you need to keep it in a safe place. You need to have it someplace where it's going to be located after your death. Perhaps you're going to want to give it to your lawyer to hold on to with your estate planning documents. I know I have a number of those letters that clients leave with us that we hold on to until after their death anyhow. So you do need to keep it in a safe place. Obviously, you need to review it periodically, just like your estate plan. Circumstances can change, your thoughts can change. Another consideration, it's not really a good time to get in the final word or to air grievances that you might have against individual. The idea is to perhaps share something positive so they have a positive takeaway from you after your death. Now, oftentimes a letter's in writing, but today, given technology, you're going to find clients today who are doing a video or maybe doing an audio, some sort of an electronic memory of or indication of what their goodbye is or their instructions happen to be. So a number of clients are looking at those things today, and if it's important to you, that's something that you should consider putting together. And again, probably keeping with your estate planning documents so that everything is in one place at the time that it's needed. So let's talk today about our trivia question of the day. As you know, sometime during each program in July, I have been asking a question about Michigan. It might have been a place, event, history, or something about geography. And I've been asking a different question each week during July, and certainly today is the last Tuesday in July. At the end of the month, we're going to take all the correct answers to all the trivia questions that have been asked and answered, and we're going to randomly draw from those correct answers and provide this month's prize to the winners. So July, there will have been 4 questions. If you answer all 4 questions, you're going to have 4 chances to win. As always, at least this time, again, our prize is going to consist of the Love Michigan coffee mug from theMittenState.com, a copy of Under the Radar, the First 50 book. Again, that's the book put out through the Detroit Public Broadcasting Service about places to go in Michigan, things to do in Michigan. And then we're going to include a surprise gift in there as well that I think you will enjoy. So this week's question, I happen to be up here, as I indicated, in Sault Ste. Marie. And yesterday had the opportunity to watch one of the large freighters go through the Soo Locks. And if you've never had an opportunity to do that, it's certainly quite an experience. It's a very up-close experience and pretty amazing to watch that happen as a boat goes some 20 feet up higher in the air. It happened to be coming from Lake Huron direction, and so it was raising up at that point in time anyhow. But so my question for today is, how many vessels pass through the Soo Locks annually? Again, how many vessels pass through? Now, these aren't just freighters. We're talking about vessels, so freighters, private boats, etc. How many vessels pass through the Soo Locks annually? If you think you know the answer, email it to me, tom@tuesdaywithtom.com. Again, all the answers to the July questions have to be received by July 31st. Please include your name, number, phone number, email address, and mailing address so we know where to send the prize if you're the winner. July's winner will be announced next Tuesday, which will be the first program in August. And as always, please invite your friends and family to play along so that they can enjoy the trivia question as well. So, would you like our help in putting your peace of mind plan together? You might remember a couple of weeks ago, I talked about peace of mind planning and what all that entails, but the main portion of the peace of mind planning for many clients is going to be the estate planning. So if we can assist you in planning your estate, perhaps updating an existing estate plan that you had prepared by another attorney or by us, if that's the case. As I indicated in a previous episode of this program, circumstances change and your estate plans need to be updated to stay current with your circumstances as well as any changes that happen in the law along the way. Or if we can help you in settling a loved one's estate. We assist clients throughout the entire state of Michigan. Again, I'm up here in the UP for a couple days, meeting with clients about possibly doing estate plans for them. But through technology, we're able to assist you probably wherever you happen to be in the state of Michigan. You can call Becky, our secretary in Lansing, 517-323-7366, or in Grand Rapids, 616-419-8862. And Becky will get you set up with a meeting. If your Lansing or Grand Rapids is convenient to you, we'll meet with you in one of our offices there. If those aren't convenient to you, we can certainly talk to you by telephone. We can do it by Skype. We can do it by FaceTime. We can do plain old telephone call. But I'm fairly confident that we can assist you wherever you happen to be in the state of Michigan with your planning needs or settling loved one's estate. Again, if you set up an estate planning consultation, Becky is going to send you a copy of our free estate planning guidebook, which you can also download from our office website, which is doylelawpc.com. So, what's happening in the state of Michigan? Well, again, because I've been on vacation, I've been trying to sit back and just enjoy being up in northern Michigan. But I know there's a lot of activities going on. Someone was saying to me today, well, it's already the end of July. And I said, well, we still have August, we still have September, we still have a lot of good weather and good vacation time left. So I invite you to go to the Pure Michigan website. We have a link to that website on our TuesdayWithTom.com site. We have a link to the Michigan Festivals and Events Association site. Both of those sites, great resources if you're looking for something new and different to do that you didn't know about it. I'd encourage you to look at those sites. And as always, we have links to some of the travel blogs about Michigan and some of the Michigan history so that you can be better informed about what's going on in your state. As always, though, if you have a comment about our program or a topic that you'd like to have me discuss, or perhaps questions that you'd like to have answered. And you might recall a couple weeks ago, we had a call-in program. We had a series of questions that had been submitted to us previously and or asked at seminars. I know I was asked some very good questions at this morning's seminar up here in Sault Ste. Marie. So send me your questions, because we will have more call-in programs in the future. We'll have opportunities to answer specific questions in the future. So send me your questions, or maybe you have a place in Michigan that you think I should visit or something that you should talk about. Send me an email. Again, tom@tuesdaywithtom.com, or you can always mail me a postcard, Tom Doyle, P.O. Box 16066, Lansing, Michigan 48901. And you can follow us on Facebook. We have a Tuesday with Tom Facebook page. We have a Doyle Law PC, which is our office page, which is, again, Doyle Law PC. Or you can follow us on Twitter at Doyle Law PC. So we provide a number of opportunities for you to follow some of the things that we're talking about and what the office is involved in. As always, please remember that any of the information that I provided to you during this program is for educational purposes only and is not intended to be legal advice. Obviously, you need to work with your attorney to determine what is appropriate for you and your estate plan. I thank you again for spending some time with us on this Tuesday, and as always, I hope that you have an awesome day in Michigan.